Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Destina. This is Spiritually Bougie Astrology, and we're going to take a look at the major astrological transits for November of 2023. If you're looking at me right now and going, why do you have a towel on your head? My intuition is kicking me. It's been kicking me all day. I meditated on the month ahead transits, and no matter how I look at it, there's some element of what we're going into that I still can't see. And I recorded this episode earlier, but the thing is, I didn't love the episode. I didn't love my energy in it. I could feel the blockages coming through. And when there's so much wrong with an episode that it bothers me, I won't upload it and I'll re-record. So earlier when I recorded, I got done, I just walked away from the computer. Usually I don't do that. I walked away, went in the living room, played with the dogs, did some yoga, cooked dinner for me and my mom, did some more yoga, did some more playing with the dogs. Still wasn't getting any answers coming through. The dogs never have good answers. They always just say, give us more treats. That's not the word I use in this house, just by the way, but give us more treats. That's what we want. So ultimately I did meditative shower. That helps me clear my head. And it did help. And the whole idea was like, I just need to come back in here and re-record it. So I'm going to be clear from the very beginning. There's so much to where we're going next that is not set in stone yet. It is still up in the air because not all of the decisions in a micro aspect, so as individuals, or in the macro big picture aspect, not all of the decisions and the events that are necessary for what's going to unfold next, not every decision has been made. We are still in elements where free will is at play, which is a wonderful thing. I'm all about free will. But not all of the decisions have been made, and I don't feel like all of the decisions are going to get made until we get through the first 10 days of November. That's the truth. I've said before, how we start November versus how we end November are two very different categories. It's two very different ends of the spectrum. I meant that. I'm meaning it now. With that being said, when we get to these points where I don't see everything clearly, I'm just going to tell you that. It's not that I can't give you a basic delineation of what this transit can be, but the thing is every other astrologer can do that too. But I'm an intuitive astrologer first. And if my intuition isn't telling me everything that I need to know to give you guys accurate information, then I'm not going to risk it. Because I don't want to be wrong. I don't need the egg on my face. I fall on my face just fine on my own. I do not need help. It's just the truth. Oh, and whenever my hair is up like this and I'm smiling, I look like my grandma, so sorry, like a squirrel. Oh. In the last few days of October, going into November, we are still in a timeline of trying to solidify something. Some of us were trying to solidify something in our individual lives. Others were waiting on something to be solidified in our realm, in society, in the atmosphere, in some way, shape, or form. Because that decision is what's going to impact what you do next, or how you handle something, or how something gets handled for you, because there's going to be some people that they don't necessarily get to keep making the decisions on their own. Responsibilities are changing. A lot of individuals, in some ways, as we get into the first 10 days of November, are starting something new. Some are starting something over. Some are taking something that they've been working on very diligently and very slowly for quite some time, and they're going to suddenly take it to the next level. They're going to expand. They're going to ascend. What was that word? Anyways, ascend. We're in a time of growth and change. We've been in an energy for a while of trying to transition into the new fixed areas of life. Our new long-term strategy, our new long-term position, our new long-term role. These long-term roles, though, are based off of either somebody making space and getting out of the goddamn way, expansion, if you're actually one of the rare industries that are in expansion mode, or we're waiting for the excess to get cleared. There are a lot of changes that are going on in the macro sense, so big picture sense, that are going to be based off of the economics. I've been saying since July, we are going through a timeline where we need to purge and clear and make space. Some of the clearing has been done. Some of us are dealing with the last little rounds of clearing. And once that clearing is done, once the new roles are set in stone, once everything is stabilized, once things start to make sense a little bit more again, what we're going to find is the aftermath of the new role, the new position, the new place that we are at in our life is taking us into uncharted territory. It's taking us into things that we're not familiar with, especially if some of the decisions that are being made are outside of your expertise. If you've been in a steady pace of doing something within your job, within your company, within your business for so long, and you have one of those miraculous, like Shark Tank moments, and all of a sudden overnight you have exponential growth, which I'm never a fan of, and I've said that before. It's better to have sustainable growth than exponential growth. But the thing is some of the transits at the first part of November for some people are going to be exponential because of what dissolves. Now, for some people, the dissolution and what comes to life, not life, well, life, yeah, that can be that too. What comes to light this week, this first week of November, it is what comes to light that leads to what happens next. Not everybody is in a place where it's all sunshine and rainbows. Some people are going to have that last little bit of fraudulent, lie, malicious activity brought to the surface. Some people are going to have a mirror held in front of their face, and it is being caught doing what they were not supposed to be doing that leads to the dissolution energy. The thing about that dissolution energy, whether it's a good dissolution or a bad dissolution, I will give you examples of both here in just a second. I kind of give you an example first and then I'll have a bad one, but I'll give you an example of a good one too. Whatever barrier dissolves in one place will immediately create new barriers in others. New barriers, new rules, new guidelines, new ways of thinking, new brick walls, energetic barriers, brick walls. Now, in some ways, that's because you got caught red-headed doing something you shouldn't have been doing. Shady shit was at hand. And as soon as everybody knows your shady shit was at hand, connections cut, severed. This person knows what you did, or you just caught somebody doing something, and you know what they did. And as soon as everybody else is in the know, barrier, cut off, not talking to you anymore, not a part of this anymore. And it creates new walls. Again, that's the negative. What would be a more positive way for the first part month to kind of manifest? A more positive way would be there's some people that they have been working on something for quite some time. They've been going through the process, going through the motions, dealing with authority figures, dealing with something that has limited their ability to work, their ability to do certain things, their scope and dynamics. And it has hindered connections. It has hindered the ability to travel. It has hindered the ability to go to school. It has hindered relationships. And what comes to light this week, what's a part of the turnaround this week that allows for the roles and everything else in the more positive light, the dissolution between two people is the dissolution of the energetic wall that has kept a union from happening, that has kept an agreement from happening, that has kept two people at odds with one another. And what happens is as this barrier dissolves and connections are made, loopy, this union is what creates the walls, but not in the negative sense. if Joe and Sue, because I always make fun of people named Joe and Susie for whatever reason, but because this is a positive one, we're going to give them respectful names. Since Joe and Sue are getting together, this is a union. They are now off limits to other people. They ain't playing the field. Them dating apps are gone. And the barrier that builds up around them is the barrier that they're not open to the other connections. They're only committed to this. They're not entertaining other people in their DMs. I said I had a positive one. This union of sorts, this turn in emotional responsibility, this turn in the way that we've been seeing something, creates new barriers in a whole other way, in a whole other light. This union is going to have its own rules. It's going to have some things written up, agreed upon. We have to learn each other's love language. And that's also part of that uncharted territory. If you haven't been able to commit to a certain relationship, if you haven't been open to something like that, of course you're going to under uncharted territory, especially if you're going into your first healthy relationship after years of toxic ones. You don't know what to do. We've all been there at some point, or we know somebody who's been in this situation at some point. We're like, yeah, aren't we supposed to be fighting by now? It's like, oh, you're not super jealous of the fact that I was talking to my friend that happens to be a girl? Like, you're not mad about that? Oh, you're not a jealous person? Oh, I'm used to having to defend myself. Yeah, until you give me a reason to make you defend yourself, I don't really care. That's been your friend since kindergarten, and that's your freaking friend. This is coming from somebody with Gemini placements that, like, I have like 10 best friends. And all of them know about one another, and that I call the other ones my best friends because it's just who I am. And then if you've been in my life for over 10 years, you ain't a friend no more, you family. But that's a different conversation. There are elements of the month of November that will be very continuous. Some are already at play. Now, since October 11th, we're going into November, so I'm trying to get myself like acclimated to saying November now. Okay. Since October 11th, Saturn has been at 0 degrees of Pisces. And this is where Saturn will be until the end of the month. Since September 27th, the nodes, the North Node in Aries, the South Node in Libra, have been at 24 degrees, and they too will still be at 24 degrees all the way until the end of this month. After certain transits unfold, after the first 10 days of the month, basically, we will have other planetary things that will take up a good portion of the month. They're not necessarily going to be horrible. They lead into a big energy into regards to what's being solidified, what is coming to light, what is coming to the surface, what will now be recognized as the way that we handle something in regards to our drive, in regards to our ambition, where our motivations are, because we are having a new fixed ambition in the energy. Fixed desires, fixed ambitions, long-term agreements, long-term roles, long-term ways of action. We have a lot of that in the energy that is solidifying at the beginning of the month. It will only solidify for so long, and then it will immediately go to the next level. Think of it in the sense of like starting a new job. You only have your first week for your first week. You'll only get away with being the new kid for so long. And then you have to start really getting your feet wet. And you have to dive into the work. You only get a pass for like the first few days, and then you have to start showing your worth. Or else you're not going to get paid. You're not going to stay in this position. That's kind of that energy. We have that first few days of this is where we take our breaks. This is where everybody hides. These are where all the bathrooms are. This is where we have our meetings. And this is going to be your office. I mean, your hole. I mean, your cave. Where it is. You get one walk around. You can ask a couple people for directions, but you're not going to get that walk around every single day. You only get so much grace. Then you have to figure some things out. As we solidify into our new roles and into our new responsibilities and into our new positions that are starting, whether this is in a social society-like position, whether this is something within our company, if you are going to a new company, or within family dynamics. Whenever it comes to Saturn, Saturn again can represent elders. And some of us are ascending into our new roles within our family. So again, as we get our bearings about us, we will immediately be going into something we've never dealt with before, going into uncharted territory. And I'm going to say this now, from the beginning of the month. This is going to be repeated all through the month of November and really into December. The thing about going into uncharted territory, and with so many of us going into uncharted territory the way that we are, is we're going to fuck some things up. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do some mix-ups. There is a human effect to that. Some of us makes mistakes. It's going to happen. You just got to deal with it. Own your mistakes. Own the responsibility levels. Own what is necessary for you to own. And don't deflect. This will help you in your new position, in this new area of authority, with authority. Some of you aren't going into like a new head honcho position. Some of you are going into like middle management. Some of us, we're not going into middle management. We're the pawn. There's a lot of strategy to the energy and figuring out who's going where and what's going to do what. I've used the chessboard analogies a couple of times. Some of us are realizing we're not going to be the rook on the white side anymore. We're about to be a pawn on the black side. Maybe the black side is a bigger team. Maybe they make more money. Maybe it's because you moved to a whole other state and you're having to start from scratch. Oh, wait, I've already said many of us are going to be starting over in some element. We're going to be doing some new things. We're doing new things. If you know that going into the month, and you know you're going to mix some things up, and you know you're going to make mistakes, just own it. Own it from the beginning. Make a lot of things a lot easier on people. Easier on you, easier on everybody. Now, as we get more and more into some of this uncharted territory, there will be mishaps that are not always in your control. Some people are shady, and I'm going to remind you of that. And they will try to pull some things over because you are the new guy. Don't trust everybody. Use your gut. Use your instinct. If something doesn't seem right, ask questions. If something doesn't seem right with the boss, be quiet and pay attention and take notes and anticipate that you are going to play with the devil you don't know. Some of us, we do really well with the devil. We do really well with our demons. It's okay. It's not going to be a big deal. Other people, we gotta figure some things out first. Be aware that the uncharted territory, for some people, it's just going to be going into a position of making mistakes, and they're all our own. For other people, you're going into shark-infested waters. And there's a reason it's uncharted. Not just because it's new to you, it's because nobody tends to go in this direction. People tend to avoid it for some reason. And you'll learn the reason. All through the rest of this year, we are transitioning into our new fixed role, our new fixed position, our new thing that we're going to be doing, that we're going to be dealing with, our way of making money, our way of reaching out to the world, our way of handling certain things. We are all sliding into our new fixed role, while also immediately going into something uncharted. And as we carry ourselves through November, you will start to recognize when you're in the uncharted territory. You're going to recognize it. You're going to feel it. You're going to question it. And for a lot of people, it's going to happen after Mercury goes into Sagittarius. Because once Mercury goes into Sagittarius, Mercury is in its detriment. Mercury does not do well in Jupiter's signs. There's a reason Mercury rules the signs opposite of Jupiter. Where hope and faith and religion and philosophy do well, logic and science do not. Thank Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's not an astrology person. He's not a religious person. He is a science person. I've never pulled his chart before, but I have a feeling that he's got a lot of Virgo placements. Virgo or Capricorn. I'm going to have to pull that later and just, justify it for myself. Where logic excels, hope, faith, and religion, they don't tend to do as much. They're not as accepted. They don't do as well. Our logical brain, Mercury, is going to go into Jupiter's sign. We're going to have a lot of hopeful, boastful, confident even decisions that will backfire on us. But much of us, we're not going to necessarily know the backfire until we get into December. We're going to learn as we go. We're going to learn in our moments. And again, even I am blocked with how some of these things are going to go. But we're going there. So let's take a look at the charts. Oh, and for those that have never dealt with me on a month ahead forecast or on a weekly forecast, I'm going to give you the transits. And I will narrow the transits down. Sometimes I will give you a range. In the regards to the month ahead, I will give you the exact times of when these are going to perfect. But the thing is, if you have 4 or 5 days that everything that goes through happens at 5 in the morning or 2 in the morning, the likelihood that you're going to have every single one of those transits perfect in your life at 2 o'clock in the morning, probably slim to none. Some of you might have a hard time sleeping the night before, or the next morning, you're going to wake up super, super irritable. Not necessarily knowing why, and not realizing that some type of energy overnight has been activated. The human effect is sometimes we have something happen astrologically in the middle of the night that manifests either the night before, going into the overnight, or the next morning. And that's the human effect. I will give you the energy down to the minute as close as possible, based off of the way my systems have calculated everything out. But the human effect it can happen anytime the day of or the day before. And we're in eclipse season. It can happen anytime at all. But eclipse season is going to end. It's going to end whenever we get to the new moon in Scorpio, just to be clear. So let's take a look at the screen. We're starting on November 3rd. Now, the reason we're starting on November 3rd is because we have multiple transits that are going on, and this is kind of just the middle between the two main ones. So overnight, in between the 2nd into the 3rd, the sun is going to hit its opposition to Jupiter. I'm recording this on November 1st. We're building to the sun's opposition to Jupiter while I'm recording. And many, many people are having something very, very solid and tangible come to light. This solid, tangible thing is also part of that dissolution energy. The reason it's part of the dissolution is because right after the Sun-Jupiter opposition, now this perfected between 11:51 p.m. Central Standard Time and 12:15 a.m. Central Standard Time, so overnight from the 2nd into the 3rd. And then the next one that's going to happen is Venus's opposition to Neptune, and that perfects November 3rd between 4:50 p.m. and 5:11 p.m. This is the energy I was talking about in the intro. We have something that comes to light. We have something that is coming to the surface. We have a decision that is being made. This is going to be a long-term recognition, a long-term decision. There's a finality energy going on this week with Saturn turning direct. But with the sun's opposition to Jupiter, this is happening in fixed signs, while Venus, the ruler of Taurus, where Jupiter is opposite Neptune, one of the rulers of Pisces, while Jupiter being the other ruler. Traditional ruler, modern ruler. Whatever comes to light, whatever solid decision gets made, whatever connection is happening, whatever reveals itself based off of like the dissolution, foggy level of energy, like we don't know how we're going to continue until we get a verdict, until we get the rule, until they sign on the dotted line. We don't know exactly how it all unfolds. This is that. This is that. There's something in the energy from the 2nd all the way to the 4th where a barrier of some sort has to fall away. It has to reveal a decision, reveal an opportunity, reveal something. For some of us, that is going to not be fun. Again, if you got caught lying, you've been caught stealing, you've been caught doing shady shit, you ain't going to like this energy. Because what's going to be a part of the turnaround is you ain't going to be in that commitment anymore. You ain't going to work for that company no more. For other people, the dissolution or what comes to light in this energy is what allows for the union. Something dissolves, a rule, a ruling, a veil. Something comes to light, something gets recognized. And I will admit, with the Venus-Neptune energy, while the sun is opposite Jupiter, there is a bit of a romantic energy to this too. And I do see commitments and unions. But this is not going to be necessarily new connections. It would be reconnections because both Jupiter and Neptune are retrograde. Saturn, the ruler of time and commitment, is ending a retrograde. So when I said before at the beginning of the episode, I'm like, there can be some emotional turnaround in regards to responsibility. Some of this can be the romantic recommitment. Not everybody, just to be clear. It kind of depends on where this is falling in your chart. But there is something that is coming to light and coming to the surface. Now, Saturn is going to turn direct just after 2 a.m. So we're going to get this to the 4th. So November 4th, 1:15 a.m. Central Standard Time. Here is Saturn. 0 degrees, 30 minutes, retrograde. I bumped this by another hour. 0 degrees, 30 minutes, no longer retrograde. The little RX symbol is gone. Saturn is direct. Saturn entered Pisces in March. And for many of us, we started something in March. We started working on something. We started dealing with something. And part of the last few weeks has been dwindling down some element of that thing that got started. Because again, we started it with the wrong idea. We started it with the wrong people. We didn't have everything well thought. There was some element of it that wasn't ready. We either had the right idea, but we were doing it with the wrong people. We have the right people, but this was the wrong idea. There's some element that we're going to start something over again. Some of us, it has nothing to do with March. It just has to do with the fact that we are starting something anew. The old way of doing something has revealed itself to not be viable. And considering Neptune and Venus are still in this opposition, while this is going on, there's something that needs to be considered or reconsidered to be viable. We're not going to know all of it all at once, but there is a turnaround, a starting or a starting over that flows into the energy. And not everybody is going to enjoy this turnaround. For some people, this is going to be a very hard decision. It's going to be a very emotional decision. Just to be clear. Okay. If it is an emotional negative decision, part of it can be based off of an effect, not just fraud, not just a lie. Some of it can be based off of a hidden effect that's been going on, and that would be the Neptunian energy. On November the 5th, so the next day, well, it is later on the 4th, Mercury is going to hit its opposition to Uranus. Some people are going to learn of the recent turnaround, and it's going to be shocking. It's going to be surprising. It's going to be crazy. Some people are going to be like, oh, I had the greatest week. Well, I had a terrible weekend. And no matter what it is, like, we have a shock factor in mind. There's something that it's kind of a shock to the system. Whatever has revealed itself, whatever has come to light, whatever has been a part of the turnaround, that once other people are involved, it's not expected. It's very, very shocking. We get to the 6th. I went backwards instead of forwards. That's annoying. Sorry. And we have 2 transits to the 6th. Both of them are playing out at different times of day. So I'm going to just kind of back this up to where I'm kind of in the middle, and then I'll leave it alone. Between 8:21 and 8:42 a.m. Central Standard Time, Venus will go through a trine with Pluto. So I have Pluto right here, 28 degrees and 3 minutes. Venus is at 28 degrees, 13 minutes, so she's already passed it. I just kind of wanted this to be in the middle. Venus is in Virgo. It's in the mutable sign. It's in the changeable sign. It's in Mercury's sign. It's in this trine with Pluto where we need to start something new with authority, something new in regards to power, understanding a past situation, understanding where abuse has been, an abuse of power in the past. We need to understand what has changed and what has transformed. And at the same time, we need to work through how the misunderstanding can be overcome. We need to find a new way of handling something. We need to find a workaround. We need to find a solution. We need to write up the new way to do things. And that is spoken not only between Venus and Pluto, but also the fact that later in the day, same day, Mercury is going to trine Neptune. Venus is within her 3-degree range, so she's separating from Neptune. Mercury is entering a trine with Neptune. And considering Mercury and Venus will actually have a month-long sextile once we get to November 9th, there's something that has to be understood. This is the timeline that I really can't see past, just to be clear. I can see some things, like I can see it like in my personal, but whenever I start meditating on like the big picture chart, like some of these energies, that's where I'm going to start to get into the mundane things. And I'm telling you this now. There's something that has to be understood. The recent unveiling, the recent confusion, the recent fraud, the recent removal of a barrier, whatever rose-colored glasses have been removed, has to be communicated, dictated, ridiculed. There's a strategy. We have to find a solution. We have to find a workaround, and we have to be able to solidify and overcome past issues and past power struggles. This leads directly from the turnaround energy from the weekend. Okay. On November the 8th, Venus enters Libra. Now, Venus is actually going to enter Libra at 3:31 a.m. Central Standard Time. So a lot of us, we are waking up to Venus in Libra on the 8th. This is going to be a cleansing energy for Venus. Venusian people are going to be cleared of certain responsibilities. They know they're not answering to the same people. They know they're not answering to the same situation. They know that they're trying to create a new balance. Certain people in a Venusian energy. This is that. A few days later, Mercury is going to enter Sagittarius. Now that is actually going to happen right after midnight on the 10th. So literally at 12:25 a.m. Central Standard Time, Mercury is going to enter Sagittarius. And once Mercury enters Sagittarius, Mercury and Venus are going to be in a sextile. Now, for those that are not familiar with sextiles, they're between the same energies in regards to feminine or masculine. Fire and air signs are masculine. Earth and water signs are considered feminine. Venus is in an air sign, making a gentle, positive, helpful little push to Mercury. Mercury is in its detriment. Some people are going to have somebody that they're going to be working with that, again, don't necessarily know exactly what they're doing. This is where we get into like that training element. You got somebody that's going to be able to help you get around the building, help you know where all the bathrooms are, help you know how to get to the conference room. And the thing about this is Mercury, as soon as it goes into Sag, will enter a square with Saturn. We are full steam ahead. We are in uncharted territory. We are doing some things that we're not familiar with. And in a lot of ways, we're in a boastful, happy energy. We're feeling confident. And we have more than one reason why we're feeling that way. The bigger reason is because of what's going on between the Sun and Mars. Now, since the 5th, and I didn't quite get into this on the 5th, but I'm going to get into it now with this energy playing out. The Sun is getting closer to Mars. And we're getting closer to something being seen, being recognized. We're getting closer to ascension and power. We're getting closer into understanding our role and where we're going next in life. So again, this speaks to a position at work, but for other people, this is going to be that position within the family, within the tribe, within your group of people that you do things with. There's something very fixed in the air. And for some people, what comes to light is going to be very, very shocking. For some people, the shock is going to happen after Mercury goes into Sag. Specifically, between the 11th and the 12th, whenever Mars perfects its opposition to Uranus. Now, midday on the 10th, you can already see that this is building. There's a tension building. There will be some very unexpected upheaval and actions that are going to take place in this middle part of November. And I feel like parts of what I can't see are as tied to this in regards to the free will. Mars's opposition to Uranus will actually go exact on the 11th. And it's going to perfect between 3 and 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So I've got this at 12:15. I don't feel the need to move it. It's pretty close. Mars is going to hit the opposition to Uranus. A sudden breakthrough, an exciting action, an exciting event. This is Veterans Day. I literally will be doing a Veterans Day parade this day. So an exciting event. For some people, they will have an exciting disruption. Mars's energy is disruption. Uranus's energy can be very, very disruptive. As much as this can be very exciting, this can be a very disruptive few days. I hate to use the word anarchy, but there can be a little bit of that. And this is not the best time for that either. Given the way this kind of comes about, With Mercury hitting this opposition to Uranus, and then a few days later, the Sun hitting it, I feel like we have warning of something when Mercury hits the opposition to Uranus. When Mars hits this opposition, the actions or the activities will be very, very shocking. Somebody's actions or activities will be a shock to the system. For some people, it will trigger fear. When we get to the 13th, the Sun will have its opposition to Uranus, but it will happen after the new moon. So I want to get to the new moon first, and then we'll get into this. The new moon is actually going to perfect at 3:27 a.m. Central Standard Time. So I've got it at 3:15. We're pretty close. I'm not going to move this by minute. A few hours later, the Sun will actually hit its opposition to Uranus. Whatever comes to light in the immediate days following that 10th, 11th, 12th time frame, whatever comes to light is also going to herald an unexpected new beginning. Some people are going to discover an activity has been going on whenever Mars is in that opposition to Uranus. We're going to discover like two people have like got back together and they didn't tell everybody immediately. Going with the positive one on this one. How long have you two been hooking up? How long y'all been seeing each other? How long has this been going on? None ya business, because I ain't got nothing to do with you. Well, but after the first few people find out, it's going to make it a lot easier for other people. It's like, well, we made that decision. They caught us going out on a date or whatever was going on. They're going to tell your parents. They're going to tell my mom. They're going to tell your dad. They're going to tell my sister. They're going to tell somebody. They're going to tell your ex. So we might as well just come clean about it. Because at least if we can come clean, we can control the narrative. And something will come to light. For some people, it's going to come to light during the new moon. And to be clear, this new moon is the end of eclipse season. But this new moon is in a conjunction to Mars. And it will be followed by Mars's rebirth. So even though this is the end of eclipse season, I don't think that means shit this time. We're going to continue into a new solidified energy. So again, the new moon's going to perfect between 3 and 3:30 in the morning, real early. The moon will keep going, and then we get to the middle part of the day, and then, of course, the Sun will hit its opposition to Uranus. Now, this is actually going to go the most exact between 11:03 a.m. and 11:26 a.m. You can see that right here. Something will be seen, something will be recognized. The disruptive energy of Mars will immediately have a solution or more information or something else coming to light with the Sun's energy. Venus and Mercury are in their sextile still. This has not gone exact quite yet, but we're getting close to it actually. We're about 2 days away from it. And following the new moon, the Sun and Mars are tightening their conjunction for the next week. It will actually go exact late on the 17th, early on the 18th. I'll get to that point here in just a second. But whatever this energy is that's starting to unfold, we get to this 11th, 12th to the 17th, 18th time frame, this whole week, this feels like a very solid piece of energy, a very solid set of situations, solid activities. Like it's just like, it feels like it's the whole week is just one long event, one long situation, one gigantic thing that takes days to deal with. It's going to a conference. And knowing that you're going to be at this conference for days. You're going to be at this event for days. You're going to be dealing with this for days. You're going to be in this classroom, this courtroom, this situation for days. That role is going to be for a long time. but sliding into position, it's like a coordination. Coronation? Coronation. I didn't say the right word. It's like a coronation. There's an event. There's things going on. We got a lot of things coming to the surface to make everything fall into place. There's preparation. Okay. Now, like I said before, the Venus-Mercury sextile, that's actually going to go exact on the 15th. It goes exact around 7:02 a.m. And what I think is funny is when these two go exact, and it's pretty close right here, they're also in conjunct. They're in a quincunx. They're in a energy where things cannot be seen. Venus, hosting Jupiter, cannot see Jupiter. Mercury, in Jupiter's sign, cannot see Jupiter. But Mercury and Venus can see each other. And I can see how this can manifest in a couple of different ways. Now, this is when this is the most exact again, but their energy builds to this certain point all the way up to now. And even whenever they start to separate afterwards, they will continue. And these two will not completely separate away from one another until the end of the month. But it is on the 15th that the sextile between these two go the most exact. And this is also including as the Sun and Mars are in their conjunction. Venus is in the higher authority whenever it comes to Mercury. Venus is guiding Mercury. Venus is telling Mercury, that's where you step, that's where you don't step. Each of them are working within an idea of what Jupiter needs, but knows that Jupiter's not involved. So there's a couple different ways that I can explain that to make a little bit more sense. You're going to somebody to get trained on how to do something, but that person's never been a teacher before. It's not that they can't be a good teacher. It's that they're in uncharted territory with trying to help you. You are in uncharted territory because you've never done this before. This is a whole new area of life. It's a whole new area of the world. It's something completely unforeseen. You are helping somebody without another person's permission, against another person's will, or another person's word. Venus, sextile Mercury, without Jupiter having any clue. Venus is telling Mercury how to plan Jupiter's surprise party. That would be a third way to do it. Okay, well, he likes this, and I know he's going to be doing this at this time, and I know we can talk to these people, and they're going to help, and there can be a sneaky element. There can be an element of doing something without any foresight, without any agreements, without everybody being on the same page, but it doesn't have to be negative. This would be a really good energy for planning a surprise party, for planning an event, for planning for something to work a certain way. Again, the Sun and Mars are coming into their conjunction. And their conjunction does not go exact until the 17th. So I'm going to get this to the 17th and then I'm going to leave this alone. Because there are so many layers to this, it's crazy. I will put more emphasis to one part of the layer right now. But then the rest of the emphasis of this layer, I'm going to save until we get to until that weekly episode. And that is the Sun and Mars having a conjunction at 25 degrees in a trine to Uranus. 25 degrees is our last Scorpio eclipse point that Mars is going to cross. Specifically, the eclipse point from May of 2022. And what I will probably do when we get closer to this timeline is I will probably do another Meditative Rant video comparing that eclipse against this date, because that May 2022 Scorpio full moon eclipse included a Mars-Neptune conjunction. And I have been locked on the Mars-Neptune stuff since then, because I know how that manifested. I know how that came through in my meditation, and I know there's more to it. We ain't done. This is going to be a big unlocking point for some people, but I'm not going to be able to cover all of it in this episode because it's going to turn into a whole lot of mess. When we get closer to this point, I will do a meditative rant video on this one transit in particular, and I will compare it to that last eclipse. I am telling you this now because I already feel like I need to do it. But if I try to do it now, I'm not going to get everything. So I'll do it when we get closer. The Sun and Mars, they only have a conjunction once every 2 years. The last time the Sun and Mars had a conjunction, it was in Libra. And if you've listened to prior episodes, I talked about that. We've activated and we had certain things tied to 2 years ago that are now coming to culmination points. One of those have been tied to the eclipse season, literally the full moon eclipse. It just happened in Taurus over the course of the weekend going into Halloween, so literally that last weekend of October. Oh, and then the Sun-Mars conjunction. This energy right here starts an entire new year cycle, a new 2-year cycle, specific to Mars. The Sun and Mars will make conjunctions in all the signs. There will not be another Sun and Mars conjunction in Scorpio for 32 years. When I keep saying that we are setting things up for the long term, I'm not kidding. The next time these two will have a conjunction will be in 2055 in Scorpio. 32 years. That's how infrequent this conjunction will happen in this sign. This is Mars's sign that we're having the rebirth in. Whatever Scorpio represents in your individual charts, reset. This is getting the old Nintendo, and we have shaken it. We've blown all the things possible to make it work again, and now it's going to work in a whole new way. It's like blowing into the cartridges, totally changed it from the old-fashioned Nintendo up to like an N64 or an Xbox. Like, we up level. We're upping it up. We're taking it to the next level. We're increasing something. We're starting something anew. We're starting a new passion. We are starting a new drive. We are having some new part of our desire come to light. I will talk a little bit more about this whole Mars energy at the closing, because there are a lot of elements to this that I want people to be aware of. There will be effects with the Neptune energy that, again, people need to be aware of. But I don't want to like derail the middle of the episode. I kind of did that before. I think that was part of what bothered me. I will put more emphasis of this when we get to the closing of the episode, because there's so much that can be a part of the Sun-Mars conjunction that people need to be aware of on a health level, on a mental level, on a physical level, but also on the tangible real world level. This is a reset. This is a 2-year cycle set, but then also a 32-year cycle set. Whatever we are trying to solidify, by the time we get to this middle part of November, we're very aware of what's being solidified. We are very aware of our new position and our new role. We are accepting of the transformation. We are overcoming the fear, and we are accepting that we are working in uncharted territory. Whether that's a good situation or a bad situation is all depending on what's going on in your personal life and your personal charts. But there's a newness in this energy. There could be a discovery in this energy. There can be something that comes to light in this energy. This is going to be a lot for a lot of people. Simultaneous to Mars and the Sun's conjunction, they will also trine Neptune. So Mars' Neptune trine is going to happen at 2:20 a.m. Central Standard Time. It goes exactly between 2:20 a.m. and 2:53 a.m. The sun's trine to Neptune exactly is going to be 8:45 a.m. to 9:08 a.m. Central Standard Time. I'm just past that on the screen. There will be an unforeseen or an unexpected element. There will be some elements that are spiritual. There will be some elements that are, again, a part of that uncharted territory. There are some elements of this that are going to be an effect. And a lot of that has to do with Neptune's energy. Some of what comes to light or comes to the surface is going to be based off of past fraudulent activity, past lies, past abuse, past trauma. And that will be the effect. Like, well, we're just going to patch this hole and nobody's ever going to be able to come through it again. That's not the way this shit's going to go anymore. Ha 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 ha. Congratulations. Look what you did. Anyways, after the exact Sun-Mars conjunction, they're still in a conjunction. They're still going to be together. But we're still in that timeline where I'm saying before, like, whatever goes on around this time, we're pretty consistent that this is what we're dealing with. It's going to be a continuous energy that goes all the way through for days. Until we get to roughly about here. The sun has entered Sagittarius, November 22nd. The sun is in Sag. I like the sun in Sagittarius. There's a hopefulness, there's a boastfulness. There's something about Sagittarius that really reminds me of like a court jester. But as soon as the sun goes into Sag, it's also squaring Saturn. We are going to be in an energy for a few days that we know to appease an authority figure, to work with an authority figure, to work within this rule, to deal with something with our elders, to deal with something for the boss, to help the boss do something, whatever we're working with. We know in some way, shape, or form that we're in the process of ending one thing to start a new thing. And there's almost like a deadline in the energy. And the deadline is very much tied to Mars's last few days in Scorpio. Now, what I think is really interesting is once the sun squares Mars, and while we enter Mars going into, not the sun square Mars, once the sun squares Saturn, and while entering Mars and its square to Saturn, the moon is in Aries. And I'll put more emphasis on this on the weekly episode, but this is the way I read this one. This is the way I feel about this one. And until something else comes through, this is what I'm thinking. Whatever solidifies after the Sun-Mars conjunction, it leads to something that has to start. It leads to another transition. It leads to a hopeful, boastful energy. But it's also immediately met with a challenge with that square to Saturn. The one thing that I do like about these squares to Saturn is the fact that Mercury, when it was here, was in the higher authority. The sun is in the higher authority. Mars will be in the higher authority, not Saturn. This all very much speaks to how we're fixing something, how we're working through something, how we're turning something around, how we're dealing with something. We're all very, very focused, even more so now, on the uncharted territory. And some element of what's coming through that middle area of November leading into this time frame. So I'm going to go from the 10th per se. Yeah, from the 10th all the way to the 25th. This is foreshadowing something about the next eclipse season. It's foreshadowing stuff that we're going to be dealing with come April timeframe. March, April, that timeframe. Because that's when we're going to have the next eclipse season. There's something about what is solidifying in the Mars rebirth, the Mars-Sun conjunction, that immediately transitions us into the energy of preparing us for what's going to start in the next eclipse season, for what's going to be really taking off in 2024. We have a prep stage. We have a timeline where we have to get through some things. We have to work through some kinks, work through some elements, put some things to bed. And we are going to have some pushes to get some things forward. But I'm going to remind everybody, Mercury is in Sag, and some of the decisions, even though they feel very, very solid in the moment, and we're very, very hopeful in the moment, and we're very, very confident in the moment, we're still in uncharted territory, and we're still going to fuck some things up. And I feel like once all of these planets are in Sag, that's when we start to realize we might have bit off more than we can chew. We might be a little bit deeper into some shit that we weren't anticipating. We're really trying to get something worked through and turned around, and we're really far more aware of how much we are in uncharted territory. And that is, again, from the 10th all the way to the 25th, because that's when Mars will complete its square to Saturn. Mars enters Sagittarius on the 24th. But Mars and Saturn will actually perfect its square on the 25th. Again, this is another timeline where we're in like a continuous set of events and a continuous set of patterns. But what we dealt with the week before is not the same thing that we're dealing with this week. We transition. And I think it's really interesting is by the time Mars does go into Sag, the moon will be in this conjunction to Jupiter. By the time Mars hits the square with Saturn, the moon will have made a conjunction to Jupiter. These few days are very, very telling. And they've got a continuous set of energies that are flowing through them. And immediately following this, oh, Mercury, you're going to test my patience. Between the late parts of the 26th and the early parts of the 27th, Mercury. Good old frickin' Mercury. Mercury who is not thinking clearly. Mercury who is not in its good placement, is not doing well. Mercury enters shadow. What does that mean? Anything from the 26th of November forward is going to be topics, discussions, ideas, and situations we will roughly come back to in some way by the end of December, because the way we end this year is in a Mercury retrograde. And I'm saying this again now for people that are making their plans to travel in December. I've said this in prior episodes, and I'm saying it again now. I don't like travel this year. I don't like holiday travel this year. Thanksgiving travel, I can pretty well deal with it. Christmas travel, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. There's going to be problems. There's going to be situations. There's going to be a mess. It's kind of scary. Anyways, now, the 27th has another play involved, and that is our full moon in Gemini. Our full moon in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. Our full moon in Gemini, while Mercury is entering shadow. While Mercury is in a square to Neptune. While a planet is making its last square to Neptune before Neptune turns direct. There's a questioning, there's a challenge, there's something here. And I would really want to ask in these few days, what does Mercury rule in your charts, your individual charts? Because whatever Gemini represents, whatever Virgo represents, I'm more with Gemini than Virgo. That theme is going to set the stage for how things go in December. There will be some type of mistrust, miscommunication, a lie, in the energy and overpromising. I'm more likely to believe in overpromising only because Mercury's not thinking clearly. We are all feeling so confident that we can do something, that we can meet a goal, that we can, overpromise right now. Not anticipating the limitations and not anticipating the under-delivering. Holiday time frame, this November 27th time frame, don't promise shit. Don't promise anything. Just don't. Somebody has a great idea, you tell them, babe, that's a great idea. Let's talk about this in a few days. And by a few days, I mean after Mercury goes into Capricorn. But even then, don't do anything immediate. Don't do anything crazy. Yeah. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like the end of the month. Because the thing is like, whatever this is, we don't even know. And I'm not saying that in like some archaic sense. I'm like, we won't fully understand what this involves until the end of December. And the thing is, when Mercury comes back to this point, it will be with the next Mercury-Mars conjunction, because remember, we have 3 sets of Mercury-Mars conjunctions. The first one happened in October. The second one's going to happen at the end of December. And the second one includes the square to Saturn. The second one includes this point of shadow with Mercury. The second one is going to include the full moon in Gemini energy. Babies, I don't know what the hell is going on at the end of the month, but it's way bigger than any of us can fathom at this moment. I think, again, too much needs to unfold. Too much of the free will, too many of the previous decisions earlier in the month need to happen before we can even have any concept of understanding this. Just to be clear. Okay. The last little thing that we're going to start to go over now that we're at the 27th, is right after this full moon perfects. At the beginning of the episode, I said there's a couple of things that are going to take place over the course of the entire month. 1, Saturn was at 0 degrees from October 11th, and on October 27th, Saturn will finally get off the 0 degree mark. Therefore, some of the topics that we've been dealing with for the last 6 weeks are over. They're not the same. They're not going to be at the forefront of our mind because we are chugging along and we're trying to get something to progress. Even if it's in shaky ground and in uncharted territory, we are trying to get something to progress. Saturn will get off the 1 degree mark, or will leave the 0 degree mark and hit 1 degree. I'm just getting it to where I can show you that. There it is, 6:15. Saturn, 1 degree. Still in a square with Mars. So in a lot of ways, Mars is pushing for Saturn. They're like, okay, you gotta move now. Okay, you can't stay here forever. Okay, we made agreements. Now you gotta do your part too. We all gotta do our part. Mars is pushing Saturn a little bit. The next thing, and all 3 of these are going to be tied to the 30th. The next thing that will end, we have one thing that's going to happen before then, though, and that is going to be Venus. Venus and her conjunction to the South Node, and that happens on the 29th. The nodes, I said this at the beginning of the episode too, the nodes have been at 24 degrees since the end of September 27th to be exact. Venus will be the last planet that will conjoin the South Node at 24 degrees. We had Mercury, we had Mars, we had the Sun, not in this order, and now we will have Venus. Venus is trying to create balance in a lot of ways. She's trying to solidify some things. Venus will make a conjunction to the South Node. This is the body of the dragon, the body that has been discarded, that has been removed, that has been released, that has been let go of. There can be something in the last few days of November, going into the first few days of December, where we internally feel that we can't trust somebody and that we're going to have to push them away. That can happen based off of the Mars-Saturn square. That can happen based off of that Mercury-Neptune square. But energetically, the internal energy of Venus in the South Node, this takes place on the 29th. Now, this doesn't come with a major transit. This is an internal energy, an emotional quake, an emotional break, an emotional purge. For some people, this will be a peaceful energy. It will be a relief, crying tears of joy. We will feel relief. But in other ways, we're going to feel that loss. We're going to feel a heartbreak. We're going to be in our feels. Because this doesn't have a major external transit tied to it, this is going to be an internal energy. But I want people to be aware of that, because if you don't understand that these internal energies can activate like this, and if you have already been dealing with major activations because you have planets in your natal chart around this area of Libra, you might think now that we're in Scorpio season, you're done with that. In a lot of ways, you have been. But when we get to the end of November, there will be one more. And for a lot of people, this should feel very, very promising and very, very hopeful. But for other people, it's going to signify heartbreak. And if you know that going into this time frame, it's going to make it easier to make whatever decisions are tied to it. And if this goes anything like it did before, once we get into December, when Venus squares Pluto, that's when whatever this is will trigger further. But that again will be in December. This is the last transit. The only thing I want to bring up after this is once we get to this later part of the 29th, Venus and Mercury are now beyond their 3-degree point. So when we look at conjunctions, when we look at oppositions, when we look at these sextiles and trines, we look for things to be within a 3-degree range. By the time the Venus South Node conjunction hit, these two are separated enough that they're out of the 3-degree range. The next day, the South Node is going to be off of the 24-degree mark. The next day, I didn't move anything. We're still on the 30th. The Sun and Mars will be separated enough to where they're no longer in their 3-degree mark. Therefore, a lot of the energies that we are going into, once we get to the month end, the very last few days of November, we will be in an entirely different energy. A good portion of what we're dealing with all month is a driving force into the new energy. And literally, that's whenever we land, is those last few days of November and going into December. We solidify something. We find our place. We find our mark. We find our area on the chessboard. We figure out our new role. That's been the whole point of the entire month. The way we end November, what we know, what we're dealing with, where we're at, how solid things are becoming, that energy will be very, very different from what we're feeling today on November 1st. Just to be clear, very, very different energy. We're going into uncharted territory throughout the month of November. And a lot of the uncharted territory isn't completely understood until we're in those moments of sudden decisions, until we're in that moment of turnaround, until we're in that moment of dissolution, whatever it is for you. Whether it's an energetic barrier falling away between two people and allowing for a union to happen, whether that energetic barrier or that thing that comes to light creates new barriers and completely walls you away from an entire group of people, whatever it is. Those things have to happen for us to understand what happens next, for us to be able to really get our bearings about us once we get into that uncharted territory. And again, I'm going to keep saying this. I'm going to keep saying this all through the month of November. Once Mercury goes into Sag, I'm going to call it messy season. That's it. I'm going to call it messy season. I really am. because we don't even know the mess that we're in. And we won't know until whenever Mercury leaves Sag, goes into Capricorn, turns retrograde, it comes back into Sag. That's when we're really going to freaking understand that we made some messes. We made some mistakes. We said the wrong things to the wrong people. We overpromised and underdelivered. Some of us, we figure that we can continue the same momentum and the same trajectory we've always done, but then you had your Shark Tank moment and you didn't have enough stuff to fulfill the orders. I've said this example to people before. Some people go on Shark Tank not for the deal, not for a shark, and not for that money. They go on it for the exposure. They know they're going on for the exposure. Because then, as soon as they can get that product in front of millions of people, they know their sales are going to happen. But if they're not ready for those sales, they're setting themselves up for failure. Some of us were going into uncharted territory. We have no idea what's on the other end. Some of us were okay with that. Full steam ahead, balls to the wall, let's go! Other people, they're going to think it's going to be easy street. And they're going to make bad decisions that will quickly come back to bite them. Sometimes we have to learn our lessons the hard way. Sometimes we have to learn in the moment. Some of us, we're going to be making decisions that we don't even have a single clue that it's a bad decision, because the thing is we're making everything from a forthright position, and it's the other side that's shady. And we ain't going to know that until December and January. For some people, it might be January. But when I say January, I mean like the very first week of January. Because the way the Mercury retrograde goes, it ends January 1st. 1/1/24, Mercury retrograde ends. Literally the first day of that new year. So some of us are not going to fully know this commitment, this connection, we're not going to have a full understanding. Some people, they just take their times telling us everything, and what's going to happen is we're just going to get blindsided with information. Like, well, why didn't you tell me? It didn't seem important. If it's something that you aren't going to be forthright about, it's going to get misconstrued into something more important later on. So you might as well just talk about it. You might as well just be upright about it. You must use your mouth, use your words, just be honest. There's so many times that situations could have been freaking avoided if people had just been honest. Just talk. Talk it out. Talk about things. Some of you, talking is the uncharted territory because you're not good at it. You don't like it. But it's still necessary energy. And it's needed. Talk some things out. Use your words. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit more about that Sun-Mars conjunction, because I did the same kind of warning whenever we were getting into the eclipse for October 28th, that weekend, October 29th, because I said that eclipse, including a Mercury-Mars conjunction, like I gave a list of like health issues that I was concerned about then. I want to be clear, as we get closer to the Sun and Mars conjunction, there can be things within the body, within the head, within your sexual organs. Yeah, that come around. So let's talk about the sexual organs, because that's going to make everybody really happy. Mars rules Scorpio, and Scorpio is a very sexual sign. It's a part of the 8th house. The 8th house is sex, but not like the fun, lovey-dovey, romantic kind. No. Not that. It's the BDSM. It's the safe word kind. It's raw. Speaking of raw, you should use protection. Because again, you can make some unsavory decisions, not expecting any type of aftermath situation, but you should really stay protected. You should still really be aware because of where this conjunction is going to happen in the sky. Raw sexual energy can be great in the moment, But if you don't know this person you're hooking up with, I don't like the idea of random hookups in November, just to be clear. But whoever we start hooking up with could have a different type of baggage than just the crazy ex-girlfriend. We all have a crazy ex in some way, shape, or form, or we know somebody that has had a crazy ex. I'm not talking about that per se. I am talking about the other things that can come with the package. Saying that as delicately as possible. Beware of your sexual organ health. Mars rules things within your lower area that are usually tied to masculine sexual organ energy, but the thing is like with wherever the Mars and the Sun are going to be, sexual organ health. Be aware of that. Be aware of a hyperdrive in your sex life, in your sexual energy. Some of you, especially Cancer rising, it's just like oozing. Like, yeah, I want to play. I want to do all these things. I want to have fun. Just oozing out of you. Again, babies, just do the right thing. Do the smart thing. And I'm not saying this for me. It doesn't benefit me at all. It benefits you. Just to be clear. When it comes to the sun rules Leo. It is connected to the heart chakra. This will also have to do with your circulatory system. Mars rules the head. The closer we get to the Sun-Mars conjunction, you can have spikes in your blood pressure, spikes in the circulatory system, spikes deep within that can cause migraines, that can cause other things that can happen in the head. The word I'm hearing right now is aneurysms. I did not hear that in the last episode. So there's one of the things I missed. Suddenly just heard aneurysm. Like these types of things. There can be things in the skull, in the head, behind the head. So then think of all the other things that are going to be in this area. Things are going to be in this area that come to light. Some of you, it's not going to have to do with a random hookup at all. It's going to have to do with the health of that area. If you have older people in your life that have issues with their circulatory system, that have issues with their nervous system, that have issues with dementia, think the brain now, memory loss, dementia, unable to focus, that are prone to migraines. I'm prone to migraines, actually, so I'm really not looking forward to this. That are prone to migraines, that are easily irritated and irritable. The closer the Sun and Mars come together, there's going to be a lot of irritation and a lot of frustration. And the more and more things are going to come to light, it's like, if you don't have a healthy place for your energy to go right now, what should be considered ambition and drive and your roles and everything that your desire is coming to light, if this isn't coming together in a healthy way, irritation, irritability, frustration, this other way it will manifest. It does not matter if you are not in the proactive energy right now. That does not mean these energies will not manifest around you. So if you have people, especially older people, that have any type of health issue in these areas, be a little bit more keen to what's going on with them. Be a little bit more aware of how grandpa's doing. You're going to want to. It's going to be helpful. Even if you just see just a spike in their blood pressure, but nothing else, you can immediately know, oh yeah, all month we had a chance for the just blood pressure being higher. Let's just keep doing things as normal. Maybe we can increase the meds a little bit. Let's talk to the doctor. Nobody freak out. If it's manageable. If it's not manageable, take your ass on. You already know what I'm about to say. The whole idea is to manage that situation, to be aware it's coming and to manage it. Again, the uncharted territories, if you've never done that before. You're going to learn a lot in the moment. You're going to learn a lot by paying attention to what's going on with grandma or grandpa or auntie, or some of us, it's our parents. If the sun or Mars is your activation planet or your chart ruler, Scorpio risings and Aries risings, Leo risings for the sun, you're going to feel this no matter what. You're going to be aware of this disruption. There will be things that come to light in this energy. Aries rising is going to be a little bit more in the financial realm. It can be some secrets. It can be some affairs. I don't like that. For a lot more of you, it's going to lead into transformation, your own personal levels of transformation and your own levels of healing. Be aware of whatever happens during that Sun-Mars conjunction, that it can be a big teller to what's going to happen in the next eclipse season. I'm specifically saying that to Aries risings right now because Mars is your chart ruler. And the next eclipse season is going to be in your first house, babies. So again, be aware. Scorpio risings, this is about where we're helping people, how we are going to be of service, how we need to care for ourselves, how we need to care for other people, what we need to be doing in our routine, and how these adjustments in our routine is helping us ascend into our new roles and our new place and how we fit into society. For Leo risings, and be about family. I'm only bringing those three up because we're talking specifically about Mars and the sun. If this is one of your activation planets, be aware of what Mars rules in your chart and what the sun rules in your chart. If you don't understand what I mean by activation planets, feel free to message me. WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, whichever way that ends up working for you. If you know me in my personal life, then you can always just DM me directly or text me, however that part needs to work. But there can be a lot of things that come to light in regards to health the closer we get to the Sun-Mars conjunction. Something coming to the surface. If you've been feeling really weird these first few days of Mars going through Scorpio, if you've literally been feeling it in the body, then the closer the sun gets to Mars, the more you're going to feel it. And the more likely it's going to lead to a disruption. Don't let it lead to a disruption that's going to be hindering to you. Manage your symptoms. Stay ahead of it. You can use the astrology for that. I care for a dying woman every single day. You can use the astrology to manage symptoms. I do it every day. So, we're moving into uncharted territory. We're moving into a whole new way of life. We're moving into new dreams, new desires, new ambitions, new goals. We're completing a 2-year cycle. One element got completed the very last few days of October. The next element in the 2-year completion is going to take place as we get into the middle of November. And by the time we get to the end of November, we are going to be in a whole different area. It's going to be a whole different set of topics. It's going to be a whole different energy. Our awareness of the things that are happening with the people around us that we don't fully know about quite yet, we're going to be far more aware of it. Their situations as they roll into our plate as big real world decisions trickle into how they're going to affect your personal life. As those things come about in the next 10 days or so, they are going to be the immediate lead into where the next decisions that will follow. This first week of November is very important. There's so much of it that I can't see past. That doesn't always bother me. Again, it just means that free will has not fully taken shape, and that's okay. It will. And then once people make their decisions, energies and things will come more to light and they'll be more recognizable and there'll be a lot more easy to describe to you guys in the weekly forecasts. So, I am working on new scheduling. ideas and new scheduling ways that I'm going to be doing things. I mentioned something in the last episode, that Meditative Rant episode, that I will be doing, opening more things up to coaching sessions and more things one-on-one. The goal is to get something set up for you guys, and I'll let you know probably in the week ahead, the next week ahead episode, exactly how that's going to go. For people that are wanting like their birth chart reading, you're wanting like an introductory thing, I'll probably run a special on those through the middle part of November, but I'm still working out the details and working out my schedule to make sure that I can accommodate that. So I love and appreciate every single one of you. Thanks for being patient with me. Thanks for going with me from towel head to now just kind of like loose wet head. Oh, you don't tune into this for what I look like. You tune into this for what I see. I know that. That's why it doesn't bother me. So sometimes I do weird things. Starting the episode in a towel felt like a good idea. Anyways, I love and appreciate every single one of you. I will talk to everybody very, very soon. Subscribe.